Welcome to a new episode of the Superpowered Fancast. This is Darren. In 1999, Warner Brothers and the Wachowskis released the first film in a four-part sci-fi epic titled The Matrix, starring Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Lawrence Fishburne, and more. The original film was a sci-fi masterpiece that introduced some amazing special effects, action, and more importantly, concepts of control, reality, and purpose that I know I hadn't seen in science fiction films from that time. Now, one of the best things about science fiction is that you can conceptually speak to everyone, and everyone can find things within it that speak to them, their ideals and experiences. The best science fiction and entertainment will always have layers that allow you to look deeper. Considering the film is about looking beneath the surface of the world you live in and questioning its reality, The Matrix is perfect for examining one's personal self as well as the society they are born into. That self-examination led me to wonder about what other allegories could one find in the Matrix films, especially allegories about change. Now, when Lana and Lily Wachowski came out as trans in 2008 and 2016, I started to examine how the themes within the Matrix could be linked to the director's personal journey. So when the opportunity to speak to writer Tilly Bridges, a trans woman who has produced several award-winning audio dramas through their production company Pennant Productions, many of whom have cracked the Apple Podcast Top 60 scripted sci-fi shows of all time, I couldn't pass it up. Now, Tilly and her wife Susan are also writing for the animated series Monster High, as well as the Star Trek Adventures and Fallout role-playing games. Now, Tilly has brought her unique perspective on the Matrix films together in a new book, Begin Transmission, The Trans Allegories of the Matrix. Begin Transmission is a wonderfully thought-provoking and detailed analysis of the four Matrix films and the trans allegories at the heart of the story. She parallels many of those allegories to themes within the trans community, as well as her personal life, and provided me with a way of looking at the films through a completely different lens and level of understanding. A level of understanding that will allow you to do one of the first things Morpheus wants Neo to do: free your mind. So without further ado, here is my interview with author Tilly Bridges. Very much, Tilly Bridges, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I really did enjoy reading Begin Transmission, and then what I wanted to say first of all is that actually this opportunity was really interesting for me, because I had been talking to a friend of mine recently about the films. We didn't go into like a deep dive into trans allegories within it, but we started talking about like the character switch, and then that kind of like snowballed the conversation uh, into allegories and other meanings behind the film itself, especially given the Wachowskis being trans. So I just kind of and I know you've talked about this in your introduction to the book, but why do you think The Matrix has been so embraced by the trans community?
I think because, it's interesting because even before I knew that I was trans and before I knew that the Wachowskis were trans, before anyone knew that they were, I connected with these movies on a really like fundamental level that I didn't understand for a long time. I'm just like, I really love these movies and there's touching something inside me that I can't explain. But I thought I was just, a fan because I love sci-fi and I love action movies.
Right.
But it's so much more than that. It speaks to these fundamental truths about trans existence. And so I think even when you don't know you're trans, or maybe you didn't even know the Wachowskis were trans, or you didn't know that there was this allegory within all of their films, you connect with it because it's the themes about our lives and what we go through and what it's like to be us. And it's in a way that like no other media has really gotten close to. And so I think, you can identify with that even if you don't have the words for it, or even if you don't know, that it was intended to be that way. And it's just, I was really surprised when taking my notes on the films and writing everything, how really, really specific to the trans experience it was in so many different ways. And so I think it's just that, a lot of trans people picked up on that even if it was subconsciously. We could tell it was there, and it was saying things to us and about us and for us that almost nothing else does.
Right. And it, especially, well, I can't say especially, but just for me, not being trans, I did, watching the films, always get a sense that the story was about something more than just breaking out of, breaking out of the sci-fi element of it. It always did kind of
Yeah,
feel like a story about acceptance and transformation and becoming the person that you were meant to be, not the person that control or society was trying to tell you that you should be. So I
right.
so I definitely looked at it along those lines. I mean, I and any good story, especially science fiction, is going to allow you to kind of look at things from your personal lens, or see things that are deeper than I guess some others. So I would kind of ask, like, just along those lines, like, do you have an opinion right now on the current state of like media literacy and analysis? Like, what do you like? Because you go really not you take a really deep dive into all of the films and the animatrix. So, like, do you feel that that's something that we should all be doing, or we're not doing enough of, or when we're you just consuming entertainment?
That's a really good question. I have found recently, when I originally wrote these as like social media threads, right?
Right.
I didn't intend for it to be a book. And so they've been out there for a while in that form, and they've been revised and updated and expanded on for the book. But the response to those threads was really fascinating, because I still have people who will reply to me and say, I don't know what an allegory is.
Mm,
Or when I say that that the characters around Neo represent different parts of his psyche, they cannot like understand what that means. I'm like, well, Morpheus is his subconscious. So when they're interacting, that's him interacting with his own subconscious wants and desires, and how that all, and they just like can't grasp it. So I
right.
think there is, and it's not, that's not like a knock against them. I feel like there's some kind of change going on, like in our educational system, where I feel like there is a lack of critical thinking in regards to media and art, and being able to understand things on more than a surface level. So I definitely think that is happening in a lot of ways. I mean, I don't think our art has changed, because I still find you can find all kinds of great allegories and metaphor in all kinds of modern shows and movies that are coming out. But there is a portion of the population that I think has not been taught the tools of how to examine things on a deeper level. And so I think, it's a common thing for us all to do on our own. But if you're not given even the basics of how to do that, uh, it's like this, it's almost like seeing a foreign language without
Right.
being taught how to read it, right? You don't know what it means at all. You can't comprehend it on its most basic levels. So I have run into a little bit of that, and it's very concerning. That doesn't say great things about the state of education in our country right now.
Yeah, I can definitely agree. I mean, and again, it's not to say that you can't just enjoy something as you see it.
Right.
Yeah, but there are, maybe you can't discount someone who sees something more, especially when they're looking at it from a personal lens, or even from an allegorical lens, or even from a lens you know of being a writer like yourself, and being able to see and being able to see things on a deeper level than that. So I think that's one of the things that, because I've talked about your book with friends of mine and other colleagues, and I've told them to just kind of to read it, because even though you love the film, there's, and we have deep conversations about it, just as geeks, just as sci-fi geeks,
Yeah.
but there are always other things uh, that you can discover in literature. So just even along those lines, I would just it's kind of a lighter question I was going to ask. It's just like, how many times did you watch all of these films, and did you watch them like back to back, or did you have to like take a whole day and just like, okay, this is just Matrix, This day is just Matrix. This day is just Revolutions. This day is just this.
Yeah, so I initially did them all kind of spaced out, but each film I probably had to spend like 8 to 10 hours watching just that movie because I'd have to pause it so many times to take notes
Right.
and to look up something that I was maybe curious about but didn't feel like I had a good enough understanding of. And so if you've never watched the same movie only one time through for 8 to 10 hours, it's a very strange experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it was my head was buried in it for so much longer because then I'd have to take all those notes and turn it into like coherent thoughts, and then I'd have to take those thoughts and break it up for posting on social media, and then later recombine those thoughts back together and revise them for the book. So
Right.
I've been so deep in it for so long. I've told people that, and it's not just because of how much time I've spent on them working on the book and the allegories, but I can't see them even as surface level sci-fi movies anymore. Like people will
Right.
come up to me and they'll be like, well, what do you think this means about how the machines found Zion or something? And I'm like, I don't care. I just don't care at all, right? Because the allegory is so brilliantly done and so amazing that I can't see it any other way now. It's that's like its main point, and it's all that I see. So it is completely changed the way that I see them. And I think that's true for a lot of people. I think once you can see and get some handle on the allegory underneath, they become entirely different movies, and you can never really see them the same way again.
Hmm. Well, and again, along those lines, just because you had to watch the film so many times and you had to take
Yeah.
notes on them. Have you? I mean, have you watched them recently? And if you've watched any of them recently, was there anything that you saw that you missed the first few times around?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I was taking the original versions and recombining them to the book and expanding on things, I would, like I want to see this bit again. I want to see this frame again to be sure I'm not missing something. And I would catch things that I had missed. And I even mentioned originally when I posted them on social media that I'm not mentioning every single thing because I would never be able to stop. There was so
Yeah.
much. I was
Mhm.
leaving out some of the little things, but even still, I found more really amazing, brilliant little things layered in there that I had missed, the times before. So I'm not sure when I will finally stop finding new things in it to be amazed by, but it's pretty a piece of art is always really good when every time you revisit it, you're learning something new from
Right.
it, right? There's so much in there. So I love art that does that. And these films absolutely, absolutely do.
Yeah. And beyond the allegorical instances in the film, like I said, my first kind of and I've watched the films multiple times over the years since they came out. I went and saw them in the theaters. Was and still am a huge uh, Matrix fan, but I always thought about and just kind of going into one specific character. I always did kind of think about it. I know it's about Neo's journey, but I did always kind of think about the fact that the character Switch was supposed to be trans in the films, and then I
Yeah.
read online that the character was supposed to be one way in the one gender identity in the Matrix, and then another outside of it, and I just kind of wonder, like, was that, and I guess you can't speak uh, for the whole trans community, but how did that make you feel? I think when you found that out, because to me it was like that would be such an interesting storyline to follow in and of itself, and then it was so tragic to me, just that last line that Switch has, which is not like this, and I just
Yeah.
yeah, and it just always kind of resonated with that. I wanted more from the character itself. So it's just kind of like, how did you feel about um, that from your perspective?
Yeah. Well, I love Switch and I love what they wanted to do with her, but it makes me mad because these were, I mean, they weren't out as trans at the time. Nobody knew, and nobody knew these were very trans movies, or they would have never been made.
Right.
But it's so frustrating, because trans people aren't really allowed past the gatekeepers in most of the time in Hollywood to get our stories told. And there are trans people, that are about to sell a TV show, and they get told that, they're not going to buy it if you don't change your trans lead character to a cis person, because they don't think it will reach a, wide audience or whatever. And that happens to us so many times. And you can even see, we'll never know the reason for this or why it happened, because we don't know all the behind the scenes info. But even in Resurrections, when it came out 20 years later, it's, 2021, Lana Wachowski has been out as trans for 20 years, and she's, got all of this sort of cachet in Hollywood. She's really well respected, and she made this movie and could not make it surface level trans. And there's only one trans actor in it that you don't know is trans, and he only has like 2 lines. And that's so frustrating to me, because these are the, like the transiest thing out there. They're the only franchise trans people have, and we're not even allowed to be seen on screen in our own stories. And that's so hard to deal with. And I mean, I don't know about the actor that played Switch. I don't want to make assumptions that they are cis. They might not be, but it's they weren't even allowed to have a character played by possibly a cis actor be that in a fictional story, in a fictional way. And that's so frustrating. I mean, they still tried to sneak it in, kind of. If you look at Switch, I talk about this in the book a few times. In one scene, it looks like she's wearing a binder under her suit blazer, and a binder is something that trans men use to tamp down the breasts so that they don't see them and they don't feel as dysphoric, and they have a more male appearance with a flatter chest. And then there's another scene where under her blazer, she's just wearing a shirt that looks like it's a solid nude. It almost matches her skin, almost like you would believe that she was like bare chested under there as a man might be. So I love that they tried to do as much with it as they could, but it's really frustrating that even people, with the kind of respect and power that the Wachowskis have, still can't get, a lot of surface level trans stuff out there. So it's tough. I mean, like, Lana Wachowski also did Sense8, and that had a surface level trans woman who had her own very trans story as part of the show, and that was really great. But a sci-fi show on Netflix that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of isn't the same as a Matrix movie that has much more cultural understanding and knowledge. So it's really frustrating. Yeah, it's a tough thing when you don't get to see yourself represented hardly ever, and then on the occasion you're like, hey, look, a trans person, and then they immediately become the victim of violence or are the butt of a joke. And so it's really tough.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that. I mean, it would have to be frustrating to, go to be entertained and know that the only way your story can be told is allegorically. Like it's something that has to be inferred, or it can't just be out there to be consumed or rejected, or so yeah, I can definitely understand that. Do you look at other media? Well, you would have to look at other media with kind of the same lens, and you said they did.
Sure.
So and I don't want to kind of make just kind of add to the frustration, but you would have to. But are there other things in entertainment that you see that might be shifting in a more positive direction for the trans community, or is it still just that, or are you still looking for well, I know everyone's still looking for more representation, but are you seeing any more any signs in entertainment right now of things moving towards the positive, even small things?
Yeah, there is some. It does happen occasionally. There was a show that was on Peacock called it was the Queer as Folk sort of reboot It
Hmm.
only got one season though, but it was showrun by a trans woman who actually wrote the foreword to my book, Jacqueline Moore,
Right.
and it featured a trans woman character, and she had a really good, really uh, very trans story throughout the season. And I got to see parts of my life experience on screen, surface level, in a way that I hadn't before, and so that's really great, and it meant a lot to me. But when there's a very troubling trend where queer shows get canceled all the time. Just last year, we lost like 4 of the queerest shows that were out there right now. And so that's really troubling, because, we get something, and then if the representation is good, if we're lucky enough for that, then it gets taken away from us. So that's the really frustrating part. There's like there's indie stuff that's being done and made by trans people about trans stuff, which is great.
Hmm.
But I think we need that more mainstream representation. All marginalized communities do, because it's what changes the minds of people who don't know any, right? Like
Hmm.
my favorite example of that is the show Modern Family, which presented a cis gay male couple in just a normal, loving relationship as two people would be. And there were studies done and articles about how it changed the perception in this country about marriage equality, and that it made a big difference in that actually getting to the Supreme Court and getting changed. And so art has this power when we're allowed to see people who are different from us, and understand their experiences, and say, hey, I kind of understand what that's like, even if I don't understand the specifics, and they're human just like us, and they deserve the same rights and freedoms as everyone else. So it's so important, and it gets a little better, but then there's still just as much that is harmful, and really bad representation that harms the community. It harms the way we're perceived. And last year I did a whole uh, essay about the trans representation and everything that I saw in 2022, and it was not good. I mean, there were some good examples, even some of them though, where you're like, this was a really good thing, but because they didn't have any trans people involved, they accidentally ended up implying things that are harmful to the community,
Right.
which is what happens when our voices and stories are taken away from us. When you have to let us tell those stories, right? Or have us involved in them somehow.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's better, because like if you think about in the 90s, there were 0 trans people anywhere on screen, and it was all bad representation. And now there is some good, but it is still so low and rare. So I guess it's a super baby step forward, but there's still a long way to go.
Right. And even back to your book, Begin Transmission, what would you like readers to, I mean, besides the deep dive into the trans allegories of the Matrix, what would you like readers to get from the book itself?
I think mostly it's just that I I'm only an interpreter, right? This is all about the Wachowskis' work and what they did, and they're the geniuses. I'm just sort of your guide through the mountains. And
Right.
so if there's anything that I want people to take away from it, is to just understand the the heart that the Wachowskis have, and that they put into this work, and what they want for all of us. Because these books, while they are very specifically trans, they also have a lot to say about cisgender people,
Hmm.
and they have a lot to say about how people who are different can learn to accept each other and work together and find a better future by moving forward together.
Right.
And they very specifically are about what we owe to each other as our fellow humans, and they're about choosing not to hate people. And so there's so many really great, beautiful lessons in there that I think most of society really needs to hear. So if anything, I hope people can take a little bit away about that.
All right. Well, I certainly did, and I, especially after reading your book and rewatching the films and seeing the allegories in action, and realizing that I can still enjoy the things that I loved about the films as I watched them, but also be able to see them on a deeper level. It
Yeah,
one never took away from the other. In fact,
right.
they both enhanced the other during the experience. So I want to thank you for that, actually.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. And you know what? I think that's absolutely true, because not only are they great sci-fi action movies, and not only do they have this amazing trans allegory, but they have a lot to say about so many other things, right? There's a
Right.
whole, like, they have so much to say about capitalism and trauma
And
and
true freedom
and true freedom and religion and spirituality. There's so much layered in there. So we can all take so much away from them, and none of it takes away from any of the others, you know? And
yeah.
one of the things that always, I think it upsets a lot of the people who get upset when you talk about the trans allegories, is because they identify deeply with parts of this movie, because trans stories are human stories and they are humans, and so they're going to identify with parts of it, but they don't feel that they're trans, or maybe they're scared that they might be, and so they think, I can't identify with something if it is trans, so I got to push back against it. And that's so not true, right?
Right.
I'm not religious, but I can totally see that there is this religious spirituality undercurrent through these movies, and they have something very important to say about that as well, and that doesn't take away from the trans allegory for me at all. So it's we have to just keep an open mind about all of these things, especially when you're approaching something from the perspective of people who are different from you, right? It's about understanding, and not trying to say no, 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 it's only my way.
Yeah, and I've felt that, and I've had that conversation again with friends, and I've told them to say, hey, you can also just really enjoy the kung fu fights and still,
Yeah, right, they're
right,
great.
exactly, like it's great fight choreography, but you can also see but the people who see something more in it are able to enjoy it just on a different level. It doesn't mean their level is better than yours. It just means it's different. They see it differently, and you both enjoy it the same. So you can actually should be able to come together on that point, that you both just really like love the films,
Yeah.
except for whatever reason. But Hilly Bridges, where can people pick up Begin Transmission?
It is available absolutely everywhere for pre-order right now. It comes out on June 27th. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You could order it from your local bookstore. All you really need is the title. And you can, Begin Transmission, The Trans Allegories of the Matrix is the full title. And yeah, you can get it anywhere.
Okay, I have Amazon affiliate, so I'm actually going to post my affiliate link to pick up the book. It's going to be on the website and the description for this episode when it comes out.
Oh,
And
thank you so much.
well, absolutely, I'm definitely going to encourage people to buy, because I really enjoyed the book. I also enjoyed having the time to read, because I liked both reading the book and watching the films, and kind of going back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
And it's so well detailed on the things that you see, that not only it allowed me to see things in a different way, but it allowed me to, again, it just enhanced the experience for me. So as I thanked you before, I'm thanking you again for it. But
Well, you're very kind.
well, thank you very much. But also, Tilly Bridges, if you wanted anyone to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
I am at Tilly Bridges on Twitter. I'm at Heck Yeah Tilly Bridges on Instagram. I'm at Tilly Bridges on most social media platforms that I'm on. If you are interested in the screenwriting that I do as part of a team with my wife, you can find all of that at birdguest.com. And if you are interested in the writing that I do about trans issues, which is where this book began, I've got over 100 essays that are all free, and they're all archived up at tillystranstuesdays.com. So if you want to learn about trans stuff, there's so much there for everybody. Even there's a whole section just for cis people, and there's a whole like Trans 101 section if you don't understand anything about trans people, but you'd like to and have questions. So there's tons of information out there for you to check out if that's a thing you want to do.
All right. Well, Tilly Bridges, thank you again. The book is Begin Transmission. The Trans Allegories of the Matrix. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to thank you again for being on the podcast, and I would love to speak to you again.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I'd be happy to come back anytime. You're lovely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Once again, I want to thank Tilly Bridges for being on Superpowered Fancast this week. begin transmission, the Trans Allegories of the Matrix. It will be available for purchase on Amazon and Barnes & Noble on the 27th. I absolutely recommend you giving it a read. It's a great book for anyone that's a fan of the Matrix films. As always, you can find me online at superpoweredfancast.com. You can follow me on Twitter at superpoweredfan. We even have a Facebook group. If you go to Facebook and look up Superpowered Fancast, you can find us there. If you want to follow Tilly Bridges, you can find out more about her and her work at her official website, birdquest.com. You can follow her on Twitter at Tilly Bridges. And once again, for Superpowered Fancast, this is Darren signing off, and I'll see you next time.